Hello again. Welcome back. So CELTA Journey, week 3, let me tell you what has happened. There were 2 input sessions on Tuesday morning. We looked at, with Sergio Montero. It was the first time that I've ever seen him do a training, and it was wonderful. He has very similar style to me, I think, because the way that he laid things out was similar to how I would lay things out. So it was nice to see. But he's very, very calm. And that's what I've noticed. CELTA tutors, teacher trainers, they're just very calm. So I'm going to have to tone it down a little bit because I got a lot of energy and I'm, running around. So Sergio went through teaching online versus teaching face-to-face, which I thought was a great topic. And also it's mandatory when you do CELTAs now. I gotta check the book, but it's mandatory when you do online or 100% online. If you don't do the mixed version, because you can either do it face-to-face or online, it depends, because I'll double check the regulations on this. They have to include it because now it's so common that people are doing one or the other or both. And so they want everybody to be prepared for, what kind of situations you're going to encounter and how they are similar and different depending on the way that you're delivering your lessons. So he went through the differences between online and face-to-face. He went through some of the challenges of teaching online, and then he had a whole section of useful tools, which was fantastic. So the first part, it was a lot of brainstorming, some pair work. Everybody went together, and we went through the differences online, face-to-face, with materials, activities, interactions, and monitoring, which are kind of, the big things that we have to do when in a lesson, among other things, but this is the things that are probably most impacted. And then we went through some anticipated problems, especially with teaching online. This CELTA group is doing 100% online. So they will be teaching all of their teaching practices online. All of their input sessions are online. So we focused more on online, because that's the format in which they're going to be delivering their lessons. That's not to say that we didn't look at face-to-face stuff, but because there was a heavier weight put on online, because this is where they're going to be teaching and they're going to be assessed for this program. But we did talk about the other ones. And then we went through, talked about lots of different aspects of it. There was lots of examples and lots of suggestions and super collaborative, everybody coming together, sharing experiences. And then finally at the end, Sergio shared a bunch of tech tools and things like that, which was nice to see because people started collaborating. Like the chat box was blowing up at that point because everybody was just sharing what they use and what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with. So it was actually quite fun. Then we had a session on phonology with Rubens, and he is great. I love him because he has a totally different style than me. So it's like really wonderful to see because it's just different than how I would prepare sessions, but they're so super effective. It's great to see like a different way of developing and delivering information. So he went through phonology. We focused mostly on individual sounds, the IPA. I took a ton of notes on this, actually, because I think that this is something that CELTA candidates feel quite uncomfortable with. Ironically enough, though, our group, which is kind of a mixed group, people come from varying backgrounds and have varying experience. Some of them were quite comfortable with it, but it seemed to be the people who did formal education in either letras, pedagogia, something like that, because they've studied it at university level. So they were quite comfortable with transcription in general and individual sounds. Other people struggled a little bit. I don't want to even say struggled, that they were just seemed quieter because they were a little bit more uncomfortable. But we went through all of, the major ideas in terms of individual sounds. So we went through the phonemes, we went through the chart, we looked at all the different things, we looked at the manner of articulation, the place of articulation, blah, blah, blah. So all of the, the typical stuff when you're looking at segmental features. What else? That was it. There was a lot of examples. I took a lot of notes because this is one thing that I think sometimes people are like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable about it. At least I knew I was, because in the American school system, I did not learn this way. And my formal education was related to engineering or business. So it was completely different. And yeah, it was just not what I was comfortable with. But then, of course, I, found a bunch of books and training sessions and things like that, and have become more comfortable with it. But I have to say, I'm still not so comfortable transcribing things. I can, but I don't love it. And I don't know if I should say that, but I don't love it. I have to say, I don't love it. Sometimes I use the phonemic chart with my students, and sometimes I don't. It's really super dependent on how technical my students are. Sometimes people actually really like it. I had one student that requested that I did I literally did like a teacher training session with her. It was crazy. She loved it though, but she is she's a tech person. And so she likes all of the nitty gritty details. And for her, she after I went through kind of like the phonemic chart and manner and place of articulation, I didn't give her all the technical terms, but I just kind of explained it to her. She felt so much more comfortable, and she took notes and she keeps it. And then so like I point things out to her, and she does look it up in like the dictionary, and then checks it with her own little notepad of the phonemic symbols and things like that. So for her, it was quite useful, and she enjoys it, and she uses it as a reference. But for the vast majority of my students, it's not something that they're super interested in. However, I really recommend anybody, especially native speakers, who think that they know how to pronounce everything. Please investigate. Non-native speakers are actually pretty good at this because they've had to learn the language. So good for you. Anyways, it was, people just need to know what happens, so that you need to know what happens. Your students don't actually need to know what happens, but you need to be able to explain it to your students so that they can actually produce the sounds in an intelligible way, if that makes sense. Anyways, great couple sessions. Then on Thursday, we had 2 more teachers taught. And it was interesting to see because different styles and, just kind of seeing where people are. A couple of things that came up in the feedback session and afterwards, and mostly actually, to be honest, it was mostly the candidates giving feedback to each other. So I was observing, and the main course tutor was, had some quips here and there, but not a lot, because it's unassessed lessons this week. So time management continues to be a thing that the teachers are concerned about. And I think it's because they're teaching 45-minute sessions, which is quite short if we think about our typical sessions. So 45 minutes, you have to really kind of get through things and be very concise with your planning. Let's see. What else? So pacing, time management. There was they used ICQs. Well, I have a thing about ICQs. I'm going to do a podcast about it. So just, okay. So I have a thing. It's a personal thing. So in CELTA, it is recommended that you use ICQs. And I'm not saying that they're bad, but I also feel that sometimes they're disingenuous. So I prefer to modify those a little bit. Let's see. There was a ton of speaking activities. So the students were pretty engaged. Oh, and the one thing that I noticed, and I think is a really good tip for anybody thinking of doing CELTA or teaching in general, if you don't already do this, when you send students off to speak, to do like some sort of speaking activity. One of the things that I learned way back when I did CELTA was that students need to have a purpose. They need to have a reason to go and do the activity, because when they don't have a purpose, they'll engage in the activity just because they're in class and that, a little bit of peer pressure from their teachers watching them like do your activities. But students engage much more and are much more interactive when they have an aim or an objective or a purpose. So one of the things that I think would be interesting, for example, if you have a speaking task, you should give them a reason to speak, not just, okay, so you're going to use these vocabulary words or you're going to talk about this situation. An easy way to think about it is when they come back from breakout rooms or pair work or however you're teaching, what do they have to do? So if they have to do something with the information, then there's a purpose for them to exchange information with their partner or with their group. So for example, if they are speaking about past experiences, they need to find one thing that they have in common and two things that are completely different and they don't have shared experience with that. Or find something that is unusual about your partner that they are willing to let you report back to the teacher. Or do you see what I'm saying? Like, you have to give them a reason, because if they're going to go into a breakout room, if they're going to pair up and start speaking about something, what do they have to do afterwards? Like, okay, so I have to speak to this person, not just because the teacher tells me to, but because I need to get some information so that I can do the next part. And I think that will help some people in terms of, if you want students to interact, then give them a purpose to interact. And I think that's it for week 3 of CELTA. I got nothing else. So stay tuned. I'll be back for next week and tell you what's going on and what's going down. Right now, we're in input sessions and unassessed lessons. Next week, we are starting with TP1. So the candidates will be assessed. And so I'm sure that I will have lots of typing and reports to do, but also some more information about feedback and things that kind of came up during the sessions, interesting things. So that's it for this week. Thanks so much. See you soon.